It's sad but true that the world can be an incredibly annoying place, but it's nice to know that through the power of video games there are a whole bunch of different worlds into which we can throw ourselves so we can forget all about the little irritations of real life. That is, until they start throwing in features and mechanics that drive us up the wall, because there's nothing quite as immersion breaking as a feature or mechanic that players can't stand. And yet, they persist. Well, no more video game industry, because we're here to give you a list of things that we players are absolutely sick of. Naturally, we can't speak for everyone, as hard as we might try, but we've got a good feeling that most of you out there will have been exasperated by one or more of these mechanics at some point. I'm Ashton from TripleJump, and here are 10 annoying video game features that need to go. Number 10, forced stealth missions. For clarity here, we're not saying that we're completely against stealth-based games, and if we're in the right mood, there's nothing more fun than sneaking around in the shadows waiting for the opportune moment than wasting some fools with a concealed weapon. What we don't want, however, is to be forced into doing a stealth mission in the middle of a game that hasn't previously called for it, especially if that game has been more action-focused up until that point. If stealth is optional, and if we so wish we can go in guns blazing, then fair enough. But if you're going to make us sneak around in the shadows when we previously haven't had to, well, that's going to completely irritate us. Such missions often come with insta-fail as well, so if you're spotted by whatever nameless goons you're supposed to be sneaking around, the game will send you right back to the start of the level to do the whole thing again. And don't even get us started on forced stealth missions in games with bad stealth mechanics. Because if there's one thing that's going to have us swearing loudly and lobbing our console out the window, it's having to do a stealth section that's completely broken. Number 9, unskippable dev, publisher or engine cards. Picture the scene. You've just bought a game that you've been waiting for months, if not years, to play. You're super excited to create your character and jump right into the action. The install completes, the game fires up. Oh, wait a second, there's a whole load of title cards from developers and publishers, but that's fine, because you can probably just skip them, right? Right? Well, not in all cases, and oh boy is it vexatious. We know that a lot of people put a great deal of time and effort into creating our favourite titles, and we understand that they want to make sure players know who's responsible for their masterpiece, or to whom to address complaint letters in some circumstances. Can't wait to the end credits though. Once we're done playing the game, we don't mind you sticking a great many big logos wherever you want, and if you must insist on slapping them before the main menu, then do us all a favour and give us a skip button. Preferably start, but we'll settle for X or A. We must also give a big mention here to unskippable cutscenes, because frankly, I'm sick of hearing that one boss's monologue over and over again, especially after he, or she, keeps eviscerating me. I just want to kick some boss butt without interruption, alright? Number 8, invisible walls. Look, we get it, video game worlds can't be infinite. Well, not unless you're Minecraft, but not everyone is. We know that there has to be something that says, "Stop, ye have ventured too far. Turn back lest ye find ye in trouble." There are plenty of things in the real world, however, that tell actual human people that they're unable to go any further. So why developers feel the need to include invisible walls in their games is simply beyond me. We've all been there. Rather than doing what the game tells you to do, you decide to brave the elements and have a walk around the map, but before long, boop! You've wandered into an invisible wall. Is the game broken? Perhaps you've encountered some kind of bug. No, it's just that the devs were too lazy to come up with a better solution. Like, I don't know, a brick wall, a fence, a sheer cliff face, literally anything else. We're also mad at the objects in games that look like you should be able to jump on them, because everything about their aesthetic is in keeping with the other items we've been able to previously scale. What's hard about making things look unclimbable? Do better, game devs, do better. Number 7, fetch quests. I'm going to preface this entry by saying not all fetch quests, because there are those out there that don't have us wanting to tear our hair out. Sometimes it's necessary to send our player character on a bit of a hunt to find a certain artifact or important potion ingredient in order to advance the plot, and when it's just the occasional mission, it's not really too vexing. What does get right on our nerves, however, is games where every other quest or side mission boils down to a fetch quest. There are a few things in gaming more tedious than speaking to an NPC, finding out that they need you to go and get a MacGuffin or MacGuffins from the other side of the map, and then bringing it back for a reward. What's worse than that is fetch quests where you do exactly that, only to find out you've only completed the first subsection of the quest. And now you need to go to a different part of the map to get something else. If you knew you needed all of these things, dear NPC, why didn't you just tell me about it in the first place? Just give me a list next time, just save us all the faff. Number 6, encumbrance. We considered including limited inventory space and suitcase Tetris on our list, but upon further reflection, these things do make some kind of sense. After all, in most games you're a human, or at least humanoid, so it's totally understandable that you'd only be able to carry so much stuff. Encumbrance, on the other hand, can get in the bin, because nothing about the idea adds up. For those who haven't come across the trope before, developers will sometimes use encumbrance as a method of inventory management, with the idea being that there's only so much weight a player can carry, rather than a limitation on individual items. The problem is, you end up with games where you can be carrying around a dozen swords, gallons of potions, and an entire buffet's worth of ham sandwiches, no problem. But try and slip another ring in that backpack and you're suddenly in trouble. The point is that if my rucksack has a maximum capacity of 35 crossbows, then fair enough. But the fact that we can just keep stuffing things into a bag that has no limits on size, but has some sort of built-in set of scales, well, that's just too much suspension of disbelief, thank you very much. Number 5, quests with time limits. One of the best things about open world games is the freedom you have to explore, and all of the wonderful side quests that you get to embark on. Sometimes it's just nice to dot around various areas, picking up quests to hoard for later. After all, you might not be quite ready to take on the high-powered enemy yet, but that's okay because you can just pop that quest into your back pocket for later on. Not so fast there, buddy, because what you've got yourself there is a timed quest, and if you don't do it within the allotted, often arbitrary time period that the game has given you, well, then I'm afraid you're a failure. That's right, you best write a letter to your parents telling them that they raised a complete loser. The idea is less egregious, though not entirely without fault, within the main storyline, so at least if you do run out of time you can go back and try again, but we completely draw the line with side quests that fail and then don't let us retry later down the line. I just want to stockpile my quests like a quest dragon and do them at my leisure, and I really don't think that's too much to ask. Number 4, tap to run. The ability for a player character to run in video games is one of the core things they should all be able to do, whether it's in order to evade a particularly tricky enemy or just to get from point A to point B a little more quickly. We still can't understand then why some developers try to make the act of running as taxing on the player as possible. Most games will allow players to toggle sprinting on or off with some simple press of a button, and some will even take the headache out entirely by auto-running if the left stick is pushed far enough forward. Some, however, insist on making us press L3 to toggle running on and off, which is all too easy just to catch when you're trying to maneuver your character around. And some even go as far to make the player repeatedly tap a button to keep up their character's pace. Yes, I am looking at you, Grand Theft Auto series. What are you going to do about it? Because whilst I imagine your games would allow me to get into all sorts of trouble, I expected it to be more crime related and less carpal tunnel-y. I apologise for my outburst, my thumb just really hurts. Number 3, dialogue trees. This is another entry that we feel the need to caveat, because obviously we don't have a problem with all dialogue trees. In fact, if they give some interesting options that allow for different outcomes to the conversation, then we're very much on board. No, what we're talking about is the dialogue trees where the idea is to simply click through the options so that the NPC can tell you everything they need to. If there's no difference in the end point of the discussion, regardless of which options we pick in what order, then why not just have the NPC tell us everything automatically? We get that sometimes there's a need for the player character to interject, like in a real conversation, but again, why not just have them do it automatically? That way we can all just sit back and enjoy the exposition dump without having to cycle through a bunch of pointless options. At the end of the day, that's really all these interactions boil down to, and considering that our protagonist probably has a lot on his or her plate as it is, then we don't see why these NPCs can't just tell us everything we need to know so that we can be on our way. Number 2, slow escortees. Love them or hate them, escort missions are a mainstay of video games, and one which doesn't look to be going away anytime soon. Some games are even built around assuring the safety of another person, and as long as you go into it knowing that's what you've signed up for, then no harm, no foul. There are some titles, however, that take the absolute Michael when it comes to escort missions, by making the NPC you're supposed to be taking care of the slowest or daftest person on the entire planet. Worse than that, there is NPCs that move slightly faster than your walking pace, but not as quickly as a run, so you end up in a persistent loop of walking until they get a bit ahead, then dashing forward and waiting for them to catch up. Not quite as irritating, but still pretty annoying, are NPCs who you just have to follow for a bit of exposition. Why not just make the whole thing a cutscene? That way we don't have to slowly plod along next to them whilst they spew backstory, and it gives us 30 seconds to grab a drink or a snack. Staying hydrated is incredibly important whilst gaming, people. And number 1, microtransactions. If there's one thing that we could choose to banish to the fieriest depths of video game hell, it would definitely be microtransactions. There's absolutely no caveat to this entry, and as far as we're concerned, microtransactions are the devil's work. Perhaps the least offensive, if there is such a thing, is microtransactions in a free-to-play games. They are still annoying, especially when it means you're unable to progress in the game for several hours without purchasing gems or whatever, but still developers don't work for free, and they've got to make their money somehow. Microtransactions for cosmetic items are also probably not the worst thing in the world, though some games do take the mick when it comes to the pricing of said unlockables. And then there's the absolute worst offenders, the pay-to-win models. Ugh. The ones that justify themselves by saying you could unlock everything that's on offer by playing the game, but why would you sink 100+ hours of your time into something that you could just get by shelling out a bit of cash? It's a horrible business practice, it's unfair to those who can't or won't pay to gain a gameplay advantage, and frankly, we're tired of developers who keep including it in video games.